So my name is Charmeen Aziz, she, her pronouns, and I'm here on behalf of Durham Beyond Policing, an abolitionist organization based out of Durham, North Carolina.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for making time to do this. Like I said, first thing in the morning, Charmaine. You said you're interested in telling us a little bit about your origin story in this work. So, if there's a specific moment that incited you, a event you attended, I'd love to hear about that.
Great. Yeah, so I am part Kurdish from Iraqi occupied Kurdistan. And I would say that's what moves me to organize and support revolutionary movements. My father is from a town a little south of Suleimania in Iraqi occupied Kurdistan. He lives in a village called Darbandi Khan, and after high school, he had two choices, which was to join the Ba'ath Party under Saddam Hussein or to join the Iraqi military, which was both of these choices would lead for him to kill his own people, Kurdish people. So he joined the Peshmerga, which are freedom fighters. And so he graduated high school, had hopes of being a math teacher, but instead joined the revolution and went through atrocious experiences, ended up in Iran, and was able to seek political asylum in Germany, and then ended up in Miami, Florida, as a as a refugee.
Do you mind if I ask kind of like what era that is happening?
Yeah, it was in the 70s. Late 70s into the early 80s is when he ended up in Miami. And that's where he met my mother. She is from Lima, Peru. So there was a big cross-section of Arab and Kurdish immigrants in Miami, as well as Latin Americans, Cubans, all of that. So I have a few friends who have Kurdish fathers and Ecuadorian mothers and Cuban mothers. So there's a really interesting cross-section there, thanks to Miami. But my father never really taught me much about the Kurdish struggle. I don't blame him for it or resent him for it. I understand now that it's because there was a lot of unacknowledged PTSD and trauma, and especially men are not given a space to be vulnerable and open up and seek healing. And he went from a war zone to working at an IHOP and being told what to do and getting into fights and not really understanding how to manage his anger or how to love and be loved, I think. So I learned a few things. I always knew that he was, a place where he was at with his group fighting as Peshmerga was bombed, and basically he almost died many times, and his best friend passed away right next to him. So I knew things happened, but I had no idea how to ask, more questions. The curiosity piece for me was missing, and I didn't have the language and all of that. So I would hear bits and pieces. I knew that there was really awful things happening, that he endured horrific things. And I would get some insight into it by joining him while he gathered with his Kurdish community in Miami. But unfortunately, they spoke Kurdish, and they never really formally taught me. So I would understand things here and there. I know how to say no, I'm not hungry. Yes, I want rice. Things like that. But I know that if I were to have understood the things they were saying there, it would have been I would be a different person today. And so it took a while for me to really commit to learning more about my father's struggle and the Kurdish struggle in general. And I guess I would have to thank the internet for exposing me to other avenues of learning, and other Kurdish people in the diaspora who knew more about it because maybe they grew up in Kurdistan or their parents did teach them, and were prepared mentally to like have that responsibility of passing it on. So I learned a lot from others. But something that really, really radicalized me, I would say, was the Trayvon Martin murder in Orlando, Florida. I grew up in Miami and I went to college at the University of Central Florida. And I graduated in 2010, and I was back in Miami when Trayvon Martin was murdered. And that really, really like changed me. You know, especially the trial and just witnessing the disrespect of this child, of this dead child. It just really, really like fired something up in me. And at that time, of course, everybody was fired up. And so there was a space for me to have these conversations with people. So I got very interested in like Black liberation and fighting for and amplifying racism, fighting against racism, amplifying Black voices, and really trying to learn from them. And so that led me to, when I moved to North Carolina a few years ago, I started getting involved in local mutual aid, and I ended up joining forces with other comrades, and we now have a mutual aid organization of just cool peeps who care about people, and we run community fridges in town that didn't exist before, and it's sort of a new idea, I think, in the world, and that really kind of put me like on the streets for the first time, because I feel like a lot of my activism was behind the screen, and I've done a lot of like education through like Instagram, and like when back in 2019, Trump pulled the U.S. the U.S. Army, whatever, out of Rojava in Syria after they basically destroyed ISIS, and that was when I understood why my dad as a kid would tell me, like, you don't have friends, you only have, your family is your friends, like, they're the only people you can trust. And as a kid, you're like, Dad, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, they're my friends, I wanna go hang out with them. And like, so the trauma of him, like, not trusting anybody, like, I now understand, or I did then, really. And that fired me up. And I was living in Gainesville, Florida at the time, very randomly. And at the University of Florida, at that time, there were protests against Charlie Kirk, I think, was gonna speak there. And I was like, I'm going there. And so I joined the protest, and I held up a sign that said, Trump is funding Kurdish genocide. And it was really nice for me, because people came up to me and were like, fuck yeah, thank you for like being a Kurdish person, because a lot of people don't know who the Kurds are. So when people even give me the validation of knowing who we are, it's very empowering, and like helps the isolation that comes up for me sometimes. But so that was the first really like direct action that I was a part of, I would say. And then when I moved to Durham, started doing community fridge stuff and engaging a lot with the unhoused population, with like veterans who have nothing. And so I also was exposed to the community in Durham that is really powerful, like leftist organizations, mutual aid is really strong there, queer liberation is really big there. And so I joined Durham Beyond Policing about 2 years ago, probably. And I've kind of ebbed and flowed through phases because shit is tiring. But more recently, we've been focusing on something called the East Durham Community Design Project. And we are trying to find alternatives to policing in Durham. If you don't know anything about Durham and you Google it, Google will tell you do not go there. It is a war zone. You're going to get shot. And while it's true that there is gun violence and Black people are being killed all of the time, the answer is not for more policing. And what Durham Beyond Police aims to do, and me in general too, is like help people understand that police presence might make you feel safer, but overall it's not resolving the issue, the underlying root of why gun violence is a thing and why criminals are a thing, and like, you know, what are we doing to ensure people's basic human needs are being met? Because as we see in like Denver, in Chicago, with Eat Chicago, like when unhoused people, when formerly incarcerated people are given funds to be able to take care of themselves and also a space to learn and be empowered and like be given a path to success, they take it. Like nobody chooses to do criminal things, you know? And that really, to me, goes back to Trayvon Martin and like the nerve of some dude like imposing his, oh, I feel like I'm in danger with this kid around, lurking through this home and taking this life out of fear and under the guise of like community safety, neighborhood watch, and all these things. So yeah, I'll stop there for now.
Yeah, I'll give you a pause to take a sip of your coffee if you need some. But wow,
Is that good?
There's a lot just of.
I know. I'm sorry.
Things,
I went
no,
like
not like things I'm like personally resonating with, and like.
Oh, cool.
It's been interesting to see like how everybody brings different experiences, different things they've witnessed, and like we all end up kind of rooted in like the same. I know there's probably a lot of discussion about we should do this this week, but like I think we all want the same things at our
For
core.
sure,
and like,
yeah.
I feel like I started tearing up a little bit when you mentioned the Trayvon Martin moment, because you're not the first person who said it this week, and like it's like I don't know. I think it's for me. It's making me realize how big of a moment it was for me too. So it's just like
I think it was like on the precipice of like a lot of online sharing of information and videos and stuff, and we were able to get insight into like this is a human being, a child, and it's like I think it really opened people up to like challenge the narratives that we've been fed of like, oh, that Black kid in a hoodie, like there's something he has to have a gun, he has to have, you know, he's doing something bad.
Yeah. I'll tell a quick story before I move on that you just reminded me of I had to go to Catholic school until high school.
Oh.
My 8th grade English teacher, literally, we got in a fight. She said, like you see a Black person going down the street and you get a little scared and you cross sometimes. And I was just like, I'm out. Like, this is too weird. My parents were already going to let me go to public school before that, but it was just like,
oh.
That's just one of like thousands of examples.
Yeah, I mean, I
heavy.
wonder how many like microaggressions like that, or that's not even a microaggression, but like microaggressions that at school I probably, you know, witnessed. And I was bullied and everything too. I mean, everybody was in a way, but like post 9/11, obviously it was like terrible for any brown person. So.
Yeah, and also just want to acknowledge, like, I appreciate you sharing the complications of like your father's experience and growing up with them. Like one of my best friend is Iranian. Her dad came over like during the revolution, and they were completely estranged for years. So it's like, I might even share this with her if you don't mind.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I have a really complicated history or relationship with my father. Like he was quite abusive, mostly like emotionally and psychologically. But again, I with age, I'm like, I feel bad for him more so than like, I don't take it personally anymore. I'm just like, I wish you could understand, like, let me love you, you know. But I get it, and some people tell me I should be estranged from him. You know, they're like, why do you talk to him? He like talks so much, like he doesn't really say nice things to me. And there's still this desire for me to like understand and like, because I do see him as this like vast like history. There's so much history inside of him that I don't know, that I'm like, I can't cut that off.
Yeah. And
So
like how
that's
that
complicated.
informs his behavior, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing that.
How are we on time?
We're good. If you don't mind, like a little bit of follow up to some of that is I heard 3 or 4 different inflection points of like, and that moved me into this, and that moved me into this. If you want to like think about one of those, whether it was the experience with Trayvon's murder or like protesting Charlie Kirk, I think that's an interesting one because
Yeah.
it's like it's a more like modern thing. Like that's a very of the moment thing I haven't heard anybody talk about yet. Is like
Oh,
when
I'd love to talk about
like,
that
these
experience.
dipshits would like book campus tours, pretty much just to be protested.
Yeah.
You don't have to talk about that one, but I was like, oh,
No,
that's
I
an interesting
do.
one
I
nobody's
do think
talked
that,
about.
yeah,
But like,
I would like to.
the question is sort of like, you know, who were you like before that moment and after? Like, what have you learned about yourself since one of those like transitional moments?
I think I've learned a lot more about commitment and being fully committed to revolutionary movements and not just doing my thing on the internet, which is also helpful. You know, like during the 2019, you know, Rojava bullshit, I started making videos on Instagram, and I also started making them in Spanish for my Peruvian friends, because just to add more confusion, I lived in Peru, in Lima, Peru, from 2014 to 2019. And when I moved back to the US, I went to Gainesville. And so I was fresh from Peru. I'm like speaking Spanish a lot. I have all these new friends, and they don't know what's going on in you know, Kurdistan or anything. So I found the opportunity to like make media and content that they could understand. And so many people were like, thank you for putting this out there. Like, I'm learning so much from you. And so I think what flipped for me was, yes, doing the content and putting information out there and making it like accessible and palatable is important, which is what I was doing, but also going out and like sharing space with people who are experiencing rage and who are actually being like exploited and seeing the effects of white supremacy, like sharing space with them in person. Because like I'm a very emotionally sensitive person, and so I sometimes avoid being in rooms with suffering, because even seeing videos of it really like, you know, stirs me up inside, and I have to be careful. But I think going to that protest in the University of Florida was hard for me to decide, but I'm really glad that I did it, because it really changed my perspective of like, okay, you need to be in more spaces like these. Because with the Charlie Kirk thing, I vividly remember I'm holding up my sign. There were so many people there. It was a huge crowd of people, a lot of students, a lot of queer students, a lot of black students, and they were, you know, trying to tell the university to divest from white supremacy and this dangerous media that's taking over and propagandizing the older generation, I think, a lot, and also young men. But I remember that I was like kind of at the front of like the gate where they were walking by, and like the smug look on this dude's face, I'm like, he doesn't care about people. Like, this isn't about, like, the right moves. They do not move with love. They do not care about love. They do not care about the earth, of people. And like that really, like, I saw it in person. And I've seen it in person, like with people on the streets or people that I talk to that are like blatantly racist and all this stuff. But like seeing a shithead kid who has all this power, who spews hate, and just like seeing how easily he could completely not acknowledge how much suffering was around him and just walk through it like I'm gonna keep doing my thing. I think, yeah, that really enraged me and put me in a space where I was like, yeah, I need to be in these spaces more often, and not just like when there's, you know, media people going and stuff, but like I said before, in spaces where people are doing stuff on the ground and taking more direct action. And yeah, witnessing his dusty, disgusting face was a turning point for me.
Hi, I'm Charmaine Aziz. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here with Durham Beyond Policing, an abolitionist group out of Durham, North Carolina.
Okay. Great, thank you. And I'm excited that you want to talk strategy. This is, I feel, where a lot of us get, like, at least to start getting headaches, like, I don't know, man, to tackle what's in front of me. And this is all just totally your perspective. What's important, do you think, for our movements to remember as we navigate through this wild moment of 2024 with this presidential election nobody wants? And what do we do to organize towards the future regardless of what's going on?
Yeah, this is something that I have been thinking about a lot and wanting to speak into, so I'm really happy that I'm here. Yesterday, there was a question posed, what is the role of the left in like the election and all of that? Because we don't want to vote, you know, we don't want to like vote for any of these people. I think the role, one of the roles that I want to amplify is we need to strategize and really be rigorous about our patience, because the right wing is really patient with their funding, with their strategy, with everything. You know, when they lose campaigns, they don't stop funding and they don't stop the messaging. When they win campaigns, they don't stop funding. They don't stop messaging. I think the left, from what I've seen, in liberals, I would say, are very good at focusing on one thing. You know, like, okay, we won gay marriage. And then it's like, we get comfy and we feel like we won so much because it is such a big thing to win, gay marriage. But here we are fighting this anti-trans hate machine that's pumping through everything and emboldening so many people toward the right, because hating trans people is such a very like easy thing to get people on board with, unfortunately, with, you know, keep your children safe. Okay, yeah, fuck trans people is I think it's a very easy thing to get people on their side for. And they know that. And that's, I think, why they're pushing these laws. And they've been pushing them for a while, even when they weren't working. And because they continued and they were patient with their funding and their messaging, they are now winning those. And they are stripping trans people of their rights and making it more dangerous for them to exist. So I think we need to take the good lessons of what the right is doing, because they're doing really good things, like for their movement. Like they know what they're doing. And I think we get to like learn about the intentional strategy behind that and use it to our advantage because it works. And like, I think it's hard for us as the left to do that, because we are very, I believe at our core, we care about people. So it's very easy to feel frustrated and say, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Like, you know, we lost, I'm going to take a break. But that's when we need to continue more and fight harder Whereas the right, they're fueled by fear and they don't give a about people. So it's easier, I think, for them to navigate the wins and the losses because they don't see it like that. They have a very long-term vision. And I think we can be very short-sighted where, like I said, we win something, we relax, and then we build again when a threat becomes more imminent. And I think there needs to be consistent work toward many things. And that involves base building in a really, really gargantuan way because numbers-wise, there's less of us. Money-wise, there's less of us. And demographic-wise, there's a lot of poor people. And poor people are not, positioned to go to the streets and really take on this heaviness of what a revolutionary movement entails. So I think base building is really important in getting more people to be part of the movement so that if I do get tired and I want to take a break, it's not taking away from the rigor and the intention and the intensity of the movement. So yeah, I think patience and not being, what's the word? Yeah, like just not getting, what's the word? Like when you're like, oh, let us do anything.
Like an ennui.
Like,
I'm losing the word as well.
like we feel comfortable, and when we win certain things, and I think we just need to really have the same energy, like the same energy that we will have in 2024 if Trump gets elected is the same energy we need to have if Biden gets elected, because they're the same beast, neither of them. If Biden gets elected, there's going to be a genocide. There is one. Trump gets elected, there's going to be a genocide. Somebody said that yesterday. So it's not even about, like they're going to do something. So I think, yeah, keeping the energy up, no matter what the wins and the losses are, and not letting losses especially make us relax and think that the work is done. Or wins, like I said, with like gay marriage and how like that didn't really, yeah, that's amazing. I'm going to my lesbian best friend's wedding next year and I'm so excited. But trans people, are dying. And so I think the right uses that, their strategy is like, and liberals is like giving us crumbs, gay marriage and women's rights or whatever, but like they're not actually doing the important work, and they're not going to. So we need to, and we need to not shut up about it.
Yeah. And like the way you spoke to how it was like, oh, well, we won gay marriage, so they moved on to trans folks. It's like, if we win people over to supporting trans folks and they find that's not working, they're going to go to the next thing. I don't know if it's going to be people with disabilities or what, but like, they need a target and they're going to keep finding them, right?
Yeah. And I learned, I talk about this so much. So last year I ended up on a Zoom call with Amara Jones, who is a trans journalist, and she has her own podcast called The Anti-Trans Hate Machine. And I learned so much from her, and so much about the right's strategy and how about their think tanks and, things that like what Rising Majority is aiming to do here, the right wing is constantly doing, and they have their sectors and their dominions very well paved. So they're like, okay, you handle education, and that means Betsy DeVos is going to be the whatever Department of Education thing. You handle media. let's uplift Joe Rogan, let's uplift Andrew Tate, let's uplift, all these other people, Charlie Kirk. Let's uplift religion. And so they have a really, like I said, good strategy. And so I think what we're doing here with like the sectoral things is really great. Because when they're attacking something, like they're attacking everything at the same time. And we don't see that all the time, because they're very deliberately quiet about it. And we're not in their spaces. Like, we're not going to these conferences and we're not in the conversations because, like, to me, like, it's sickening for us to be in those spaces because we care about people. I'm sure they could come and infiltrate our thing and be like, because they don't.
He's about a mile away.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to protests and you see somebody, you're like, oh, I know.
The same smug look that Charlie gave, I feel like, would be ever present. But yeah, it's just like, I think, we need to be as rigorous as they are, but we have a different purpose and different values and we move differently, but they're winning, unfortunately. And
and so they have there's the mantra of like organized people, organized money equals, and I think in some spaces, maybe not as much as they used to say that on the left, but it's like comparatively, it's like, this is what they have. Because I always joke when I talk about, like, as a media person, it's like, who can we go to and we say, like, our end goal is, like, for funding. And we're like, our end goal is we want to end you. Like, that's a really hard thing to raise money for on the left in a capital system. And what that brings me to question-wise is, like, we are here sort of as all these, like, coalitions where at the root it's like, we all believe in life and love is like something I heard you kind of say. But we're all coming from our different issues, our different backgrounds, which again, the right has, it's just like, it's mostly just people who look like me who were comfortable their whole life and they've just found a thing to make them feel aggrieved about. That there's like real like stuff people are bringing in here and that makes coalitional work is hard. And like, what do you worry we could lose or can get diffused in this like big tent we're trying to build? And so like, and how can we all carry our own personal values, our own ideology, but support each other through this coalition work? This is a big one. You don't have to have the answer, but just wherever you're at now on that.
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying like, how could the coalition be detrimental to the movement?
Like, what do you worry? Like, we could lose in working this way, but what do you think we can do to overcome that as well?
I think what we could lose is the fire that we have inside of us to continue. I'll just speak to myself and kind of the things I've been hearing. This is my first like conference or place where I'm surrounded by people like this, which is amazing. But I'm trying to be more of a listener than a contributor actively. And so I'm hearing a lot of Black people that feel left out of conversations and formerly incarcerated people that are being left out of conversations. And so I fear that there's not really a way, I think, or there's a challenge in making sure everybody feels not only safe, but like included and taken into account when decisions are being made and validated if the decision that's being made might not benefit them in the short term. Because, for example, a lot of talk has happened about like, and even online, like, we don't want Trump to be president, right? But a lot of us don't want Biden to be president again because of what's happening. And so, and so strategy-wise, we're asking questions like, okay, can we not set aside our like morals and literal soul to contribute and build a long-term solution strategy. And how do we sleep at night, you know, knowing that we like put a check mark next to the name of a dude that I don't even know how he's alive, but also who doesn't care about the children that are being murdered on video all the time. Like, it's very divisive, and we're asking people to do things that are against their own interests and lives and livelihoods and things. And I think about how hard I think about how hard it is, I'm sure, for Black people right now to be told, you know, we just got to do this so that later on we can get the benefits from it. And it's like, they've been being told this for a very long time. Like, how long do they have to wait? And I don't know, I think personally we have a lot that we can learn from the Black Panther movement, and a lot of people in America are too comfortable with our cushy lives and our Amazon Prime to like really revolt in the way that we would need to like make really quick change. So I think, yeah, I think emotions drive us as a left because we care. And emotions can drive us away from each other because we're all fighting for each other, or for ourselves and each other, but there are decisions that we're being tasked to make that go against whether it's ourselves or the person that we love. And I think that's could be a detriment to the movement. And then you ask, like, what is a positive or something?
Or if you think there's something we can pull into strategy to like overcome some of these like potholes that you're laying out.
I think we could do a better job at really, really being rigorous about putting Black people at the forefront of the movement and letting them lead and learning from them. And yeah, I mean, that's something that I've been hearing a lot this week, that people just don't feel heard. And I don't think it's intentional. It's, you know, time is limited. So I was thinking, you know, if we really wanted to get into it, we'd have to be here for like a month, you know, to really work through these things. So like a week is just, you know, not enough. And so more of these spaces, I think, is good. And really, like, I think, I don't know, you know, depending on like financially how people make it here to this conference, I think whatever makes that possible needs to be a continuous strategy so that we're all convening semi-regularly. Because, I mean, I'm hoping at the end of this conference, there's like a plan for us to continue these conversations and not just like lose sight of it, because we're all powered up and fired up here, but when we go back home, we're dealing with all of, you know, the real world. So how do we remain, how do we keep the momentum and keep fighting for each other? So I think, yeah, one thing that could be done is like financially helping people and guaranteeing that we're able to do things like this more often, because, yeah, voices aren't being heard because there's no time. And those voices are really important. So, yeah, creating more spaces to have these conversations and really strategize and disagree with each other. And not only disagree with each other and then, okay, moving on to the next thing, like really diving into that disagreement for however long it takes for that person to feel validated, safe, etc. And it's hard because we all work. I don't have kids. I can't imagine, you know, having kids and wanting to do this work. Like, so I get it, but I think that is something that needs to happen. And that's something that's a luxury that the right has, because most of them, hoard the wealth. So they have nannies that can take care of their children. They don't really have to work. They're exploiting people who are giving them money or making them money. So they can spend most of their time convening and talking and strategizing, whereas we're working class, poor people. And, I'm lucky that I was able to come here, but there's so many other people that are not included in these conversations that I think need to be in order for it to work.
God, there's just a lot of hard stuff there. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about I could have paid my own way here if I had to, but mine's not the voice that needs heard.
No, yeah, for sure.
And I'm totally with you. It's there's so many people we wish we could bring in here, but it's at the end of the day, when we need money to do that, and the people who can give us money, it's we go to them and be like, so our end goal is to take 90% of what you have, right? It's just,
yeah, but
how do we find those people?
I mean, as a long-term strategy, though, maybe that is part of it. We need to, if we really want to be serious about base building, money is a big factor and a big obstacle for people. So, yeah.
Yeah. This has been really great. I wanted to give you time for one of these lighter ones at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to invite you, if there's a project or a hobby that you do outside of any of your work, that maybe it explicitly or implicitly informs what you do or regenerates what you do, or maybe it's an example of, here's this small plot of something in my world that I can control, that's a vision of this better world I'm working towards for myself and everybody else.
Yeah. So many things. I will say that recently, in the last 2 years, I started dancing ballet, which is something that I did as a child and then as a teenager, and I disconnected from, and really getting back into moving my body has been really healing and transformational for me. And that has, exercise is great. So, I think with age, I have come to realize working out is not just going to the gym. And I try to redefine what working out is, and being more graceful with myself. And I want to dance at home. I'm moving my body, whatever. I don't have to be lifting weights, although lifting weights is great, especially for women. But something that really helped was adopting a dog. I adopted my first dog, and she is very, very integral to my joy and my ability to live, really. So people, I think, who have the means to have a dog, especially, I would highly recommend it, although it's, not accessible to everybody. But that's something that's helped me. And then something else I think that's kind of a general thing is that I am a big proponent of seeking childlike wonder and creating it. So we grow up with this grow up, don't be a kid. And no, I'm going to be a fucking kid. I'm going to get bubbles. I'm going to color. I'm going to get a hula hoop. I'm going to, I want to do all the things that young me did and enjoyed. And adult me also gets to enjoy it. And just so seeking things that my inner child enjoyed or maybe didn't get to enjoy at the time. And then also sharing space with children. Children are just invigorating and magical, and really do help me find the childlike wonder in everyday things. So I feel just doing silly shit is really what keeps me going. And hopefully inspiring other people to do that, or not inspiring, but making it less oh, no, you're an adult, you can't do that, no. What are rules? There are no rules. No.
Great. Anything else you want to add to end?
Not to that question.
Yeah. Overall?
Free Palestine, Biji Kurdistan, free everybody, fuck 12.
All right, we'll wrap there.